Long, long time ago, when the postal system was modernized, the chronically overworked Postmaster General overlooked two tiny post offices. One tucked away in the rolling hills of Somersetshire, the other somewhere in London. After unsuccessfully awaiting modernization, these two offices continued with their quiet lives until one day their daily routine was violently disrupted by the letters of Lady Susan, the most accomplished coquette in England. To avoid another scandal on social media, Lady Susan had now taken to letter writing, and her letters were eagerly expected by the two post offices through which all of these letters coincidentally passed. What with the secrecy of the letter no longer being what it used to be, Lady Susan's letters soon ceased to be private after all.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's so good to see you.
Mr. King, we saw you just 5 minutes ago at lunch.
Dear Catherine, I am well aware of that, but we haven't seen Sandra in a while.
Hello, Sandra.
Hello all. Thank you, Jacob. How do you do? How's the family?
Very well. Sandra dear, the children are busy as usual, but they still come to see their old dad every now and then. It's a good life. How are your wife and child?
That's good to hear. Zoe and Haley are both well, though Haley's been struggling a bit in school lately. I think the other children are bullying her.
Oh.
She rather comes to Zoe with such problems. Maybe I'm too strict? I don't know.
Are we reading now or what?
Catherine, please.
What? I want to know how this goes on. And Miss Clark won't let us read the letters before reading them to you. She says, reading them once is more than enough.
Well, the impatience of youth. Sure, my dear, we can start right away when Patricia has joined us.
Sorry, I forgot to say earlier. Patricia will be a bit late, but she should be here any minute. And there she is. Perfect, then I can leave before you do something I will regret.
Sandra, dear. Oh, well, anyway. Hello, everyone. Sorry for being late. Please continue.
We haven't even started yet.
Oh, well, in that case, please begin.
Certainly, Patricia dear. This is a bit difficult. The handwriting is neat, but I can't.
Who's it from?
Mrs. Vernon, I think. Yes,
Oh, yeah.
her
She's got
mother.
She's got that weird squiggly handwriting old people have.
Catherine, she's not old. She's in her 30s.
Well, for the young ones, everyone above the age of 30 must be close to the grave, I'd say. Anyway, let me try this. Churchill, my dear mother, I rejoice with all my heart that my father is made easy by Reginald's letter. Tell him so with my congratulations. But between ourselves, I must own it has only convinced me of my brother's having no present intention of marrying Lady Susan, not that he is in no danger of doing so 3 months hence. He gives a very plausible account of her behaviour at Langford. I wish it may be true, but his intelligence must come from herself, and I am less disposed to believe it than to lament the degree of intimacy subsisting between them implied by the discussion of such a subject. I am sorry to have incurred his displeasure, but can expect nothing better while he is so very eager in Lady Susan's justification. He is very severe against me indeed, and yet I hope I have not been hasty in my judgment of her. Poor woman, though I have reasons enough for my dislike. I cannot help pitying her at present, as she is in real distress and with too much cause. She had this morning a letter from the lady with whom she had placed her daughter to request Miss Vernon might be immediately removed, as she had been detected in an attempt to run away. Why, or whither she intended to go, does not appear, but as her situation seems to have been unexceptionable, it is a sad thing, and of course highly distressing to Lady Susan. Frederica, that was the daughter, a lovely girl, must be as much as 16 and ought to know better, but from what her mother insinuates, I am afraid she is a perverse girl. Perverse girl.
Ooh.
Who would say such a thing? She has been sadly neglected, however, and her mother ought to remember it. Mr. Vernon set off for London as soon as she had determined what should be done. He is, if possible, to prevail on Miss Summers to let Frederica continue with her, and if he cannot succeed, to bring her to Churchill for the present, till some other situation can be found for her. Her ladyship is comforting herself, meanwhile, by strolling along the shrubbery with Reginald, calling forth all his tender feelings. I suppose on this distressing occasion she has been talking a great deal about it to me. She talks vastly well. I am afraid of being ungenerous, or should I say, too well, to feel so very deeply, but I will not look for her faults. She may be Reginald's wife. Heaven forbid it. But why should I be quicker sighted than anyone else? Mr. Vernon declares that he never saw deeper distress than hers on the receipt of the letter, and is his judgment inferior to mine? She was very unwilling that Frederica should be allowed to come to Churchill, and justly enough, as it seems, a sort of reward to behaviour deserving very differently. But it was impossible to take her anywhere else, and she is not to remain here long. It will be absolutely necessary, said she, as you, my dear sister, must be sensible to treat my daughter with some severity. While she is here, a most painful necessity, but I will endeavour to submit to it. I am afraid I have often been too indulgent, but my poor Frederica's temper could never bear opposition well. You must support and encourage me. You must urge the necessity of reproof if you see me too lenient. Too lenient. All this sounds very reasonable. Reginald is so incensed against the poor silly girl. Surely it is not to Lady Susan's credit that he should be so bitter against her daughter. His idea of her must be drawn from the mother's description. Well, whatever may be his fate, we have the comfort of knowing that we have done our utmost to save him. We must commit the event to a higher power. Yours ever, Catherine Vernon. What a woman.
That Frederica really is a wet blanket, isn't she, Isabella?
Well, yes, I think.
Oh, that poor girl! How she must suffer with such a mother!
That's a bit unfair, Mrs. Khan, isn't it? I mean, Lady Susan has so much on her plate as it is, so she needs to be strict with Frederica. Reginald thinks so too. I think Mrs. Vernon is being mean in writing such things to her mother.
Well, if you think so, my dear.
We have another letter from Lady Susan herself.
Goody, goody, let's hear it.
I'm sure you'll see that she's right about Frederica. You will be eager, I know, to hear something further of Frederica, and perhaps may think me negligent for not writing before. She arrived with her uncle last Thursday fortnight, when, of course, I lost no time in demanding the cause of her behaviour, and soon found myself to have been perfectly right in attributing it to my own letter. The prospect of it frightened her so thoroughly that, with a mixture of true girlish perverseness and folly, she resolved on getting out of the house and proceeding directly by the stage to her friends, the Clarks, and had really got as far as the length of 2 streets in her journey, when she was fortunately missed, pursued, and overtaken. Such was the first distinguished exploit of Miss Frederica Vernon, and if we consider that it was achieved at the tender age of 16, We shall have room for the most flattering prognostics of a future renown. I am excessively provoked, however, at the parade of propriety which prevented Miss Summers from keeping the girl, and it seems so extraordinary a piece of nicety, considering my daughter's family connections, that I can only suppose the lady to be governed by the fear of never getting her money. Be that as it may, however, Frederica has returned on my hands, and having nothing else to employ her, is busy in pursuing the plan of romance begun at Langford. She is actually falling in love with Reginald de Courcy. To disobey her mother by refusing an unexceptionable offer is not enough. Her affections must also be given without her mother's approbation. I never saw a girl of her age bid fairer to be the sport of mankind. Her feelings are tolerably acute, and she is so charmingly artless in their display as to afford the most reasonable hope of her being ridiculous and despised by every man who sees her. Ouch. Artlessness will never do in love matters, and that girl is born a simpleton who is it either by nature or affectation. I am not yet certain that Reginald sees what she's about, nor is it of much consequence. She is now an object of indifference to him, and she would be one of contempt were he to understand her emotions. Her beauty is much admired by the Vernons, but it has no effect on him. She is in high favour with her aunt altogether, because she's so little like myself, of course. She is exactly the companion for Mrs. Vernon, who dearly loves to be firm, and to have all the sense and all the wit of the conversation to herself. Frederica will never eclipse her. When she first came, I was at some pains to prevent her seeing much of her aunt, but I have relaxed, as I believe I may depend on her observing the rules I have laid down for their discourse. But do not imagine that with all this lenity I have for a moment given up my plan of her marriage. No, I am unalterably fixed on this point, though I have not yet quite decided on the manner of bringing it about. I should not choose to have the business brought on here, and canvassed by the wise heads of Mr. and Mrs. Vernon, and I cannot just now afford to go to town. Miss Frederica must therefore wait a little. Yours ever, Susan Vernon. I thought she liked Reginald more than that.
Yeah, like she hasn't been telling her friend for like forever about how Reginald is a bit of a blockhead.
Well, that's not very friendly, Catherine. Has she really been so unkind about him before?
I am afraid so, Jacob. She really seems to be an odious woman.
Mrs. Khan.
She's right, Isabella. Come off it. She's not the heroine you think she is.
But...
Zip it, crybaby.
Catherine! That was very mean.
You had better go and apologize to your cousin, Catherine. Don't blame her for falling in love with a rogue.
What?
Jacob?
Nothing. Never mind.
Isabella?
Jacob.
Well, I thought you knew. It's fairly obvious, isn't it? Well, anyway, good seeing you.
What?
Patricia, take care and see you soon.
Well, I never...